Welcome back, folks. So last time we were looking at verse 28. Avyaktadini bhutani vyaktamadhyani bharata avyakta nidharanyeva tatra ka paridevana. The soul, we so far we have seen the decomposition of the body as matter and soul. So in the theory of reincarnation, which we don't have to get into in details, the soul keeps on taking birth after birth according to the Hindu karmic doctrine. Now, we can think about it from a limited context. If we are speaking specifically of this one birth, and we don't have to go and extrapolate about what happens after, to try and stay as much as scientific as we can be, as is permissible as possible. The body is enlivened by some mysterious energy, consciousness. And when this consciousness is no longer there with the body, then the matter, it returns back to the constituent items from which it was put together. So anything that we know of which has come together as a result of the combination of its core intrinsic material will, after a certain time, again get into dissolution. However, we have seen that behind all these different types of dissolutions, we've seen that there are different orders of subtlety that are there. So we saw how matter can be understood to be built upon layers and layers of finer and finer strata of matter until it reaches a point that is indestructible. And we also saw that in case of the sentient, the spiritual side of man. So the body comes into existence and goes away. Similarly, the sentient side of man, it comes into existence and it returns back to the base constituent elements from which it was constructed. But it never ever ceases to exist. These are waves rising and going on the basic substratum of existence, consciousness, the core primary fundamental energy from which all this cosmos has come into being. Okay, let's move to the next verse. Ascharyavat pasyati kaschidinam आश्चर्यवत् वदति तथैव चान्यः आश्चर्यवच्चैनमन्यः शृणोति श्रुत्वाप्येनं वेद न चैव कश्चित्. Now, the body, we can analyze that it is made up of different molecules, and we can do the analysis and reach the point where we see that there is an energy that is holding back the very, very fundamental particles that make up matter. And the things that allow us to experience the world, to experience matter, to experience emotions, is that which takes place in our mind. Our life is a series of experiences which take place in the mind. And these experiences, they all are playing on the basic substratum of whatever the mind is. So an object that we experience is, it might exist, this object might exist in the external world, but as a matter of experience, this object comes into being inside of our mind, which is where truly we experience whatever it is that we interact with in the world. We happen to see a flower. The experience of seeing the flower takes place in the mind. We taste certain food. That experience takes place in the mind. So this experiences that we go through, which are there in the mind, these experiences, they, if we analyze what makes up these experiences, and there is a very detailed level of analysis that is done in different Vedantic texts, and maybe we can go into some level of detail in some of this, in some of our discussions. But to just get to the gist of things, there is an experiencer and then there is the experience. So there are two different entities that are involved here. So this, whatever it is that makes up this experience, the fundamental particles, the fundamental energy, which is the basis of how experience comes to be, that in English, the word that the Vedantics used is called as consciousness or Satchidananda. So there is a mental ocean, there is an ocean, and waves come, rise and fall in that ocean. And these waves, they take on different forms and shapes, and based on the form and shape that they take on, we identify them by such. As in a simplistic case, if we were to take a direct wave and ocean or sea analogy, we would say there is a small wave, there is a big wave. But at the end of the day, it is all made up of water. It is all sea water. It just takes on different forms. So also the experiences that take place in the mind upon the interaction of this body with the external or some, to a certain extent, even the internal world. These experiences, they are akin, similar to these waves which rise and fall in the ocean of consciousness or Satchidananda. So just like the wave in an ocean, which has its own place in the overall ecosystem of things, but even so, it is not separate from the ocean, and it is in fact nothing but the ocean. It's just something. It is interesting that if you look at the waves that take place in a pond, if there is a pond and a leaf falls in the water from a tree, which sets out a ripple. or if there is a small speck of something floating on the water, you can see that the wave, it advances from some point and it comes towards the edge of the pond. But if you notice, if there is a small speck or a petal, the leaf that is on the water, the wave appears to be traveling, but the leaf, it will be where it is. It just bobs up and down, and the wave continues to appear to move forward or backward depending on where you are. So similarly, this wave of experience that takes place in the mind, it is experienced as such, as different, as having its own identity. But the constituent material from which it has drawn its existence is very different, and it's completely aloof from the wave itself. The wave is nothing but water. The water is wave, but the wave, on seeing it as a wave, seems to have its own identity. So this experience that we have even in our mind, if we were to keep on analyzing what it is that makes up our experience, and we understand this ocean of mind out of which this experience was built, that whatever it is, that consciousness is a very difficult thing from a regular intellectual understanding of things standpoint. So when we say that 2 plus 2 is equal to 4, then the mind is trying to understand a concept which is foreign or different from what it is. And what takes place is an actual metamorphosis of the mind, where this concept, it actually turns into that concept and knowledge takes place. So the whatever this consciousness is, which gets used to generate the experience, in order to understand its own nature, this technique of using it to focus on something cannot be used. It is like you are in a dark room and you are trying to look for a certain thing that has fallen on the floor. So you turn on your flashlight and the light lights up the room, and then you can find the object that you are looking for. But now you want to look at the flashlight itself, the light, the torch that is throwing out this light. You want to look at that light itself. This technique that you have employed of using this torch to flash at anything that you would like to know has been working so far. But when you are asked to look at the flashlight itself by using whatever means, so the whatever means, the only means that so far we have been used to is to use this flashlight to light, to shine its light upon something else. It has not even occurred to us that can we even do this? Can we now try and see and shine the light on itself? Of course, this is an analogy, this is a metaphor. So one might say, let's flash it on a mirror, and then we'll see it. So a metaphor is just used to communicate the gist of things. You don't stretch it so that it goes beyond the point that it is trying to communicate. So because of this technique, this tool that we have been used to using to understand things is not available to us to study, to understand what it is that makes up our experiences. Because of that, the understanding of this core thing is a matter of a revelation in a very different sense. It happens to be in a different dimension, almost a different dimension of existence, where whatever things that we are used to, whatever techniques that we are used to, are inapplicable in that area. The experiences that take place in that area are inapplicable to our day-to-day experiences. Nevertheless, it is a known thing, it is a fact that it is possible to understand it. And when one is able to do that, you are dazzled by what it is that is really doing this. Things that you thought were or it didn't even occur to you was something extraordinary now stands before you, although this conveys a very wrong idea, because consciousness cannot stand in front of you. It is something that is why you can see things. So it cannot by itself stand in front of you, but just again as an analogy, when that something, it stands before you, not with this physical eyes, because it's like you can't see hunger, you cannot see love, you cannot see these emotions, these subtle things. Similar to that, you cannot see this consciousness. It's not even felt. It's in the Kenopanishad, the the seeker, he asks the question what it is impelled by what, how is it that the mind works or the eye see. And the Upanishad goes on and on, but at one point it says that which the eye cannot see but which sees the eye itself. So this is where the paradox, the issue is that we cannot use the tools that we have. The tools that we are used, we are accustomed to, these tools have to be used, if at all possible, in a different way to understand this consciousness. And so when somebody goes through this effort and figures it out, this thing that someone, when he does figure out this magic, this wonderful thing. So this verse, Ashcharyavat. Ashcharya is wonder, amazement. Ashcharyavat pashyati kaschidenam. With the wonder, he's amazed to see what he sees. So this is not something like, you see Niagara Falls or you see a volcano. It is not like that. This is a complete different kind of experience. Ashcharyavat, this person who sees it, he's dazzled by that experience. Ashcharyavat pashyati kaschidenam. Ascharyavat vadate tathaiva chanyah. The person, the hearing, he hears this again. It's just the experience of knowing that thing. It's a wonder. It's a different kind of thing that one undergoes through. It's the experience of experience. It's the coremost thing that makes up the to know that. Ascharyavat pashyati kaschidena. Ascharyavat vadati tatha. Vadati is to speak. Ascharyavat vadati tathaiva chanyah. Ascharyavat chainamanya shrunoti. Ascharyavat chainamanya shrunoti. Shrutvaapyenam vedana chaiva kaschida. Seeing, hearing, and seeing, speaking, and listening. These are the three things that they have mentioned here. So it's this self-realized person, or this spiritual genius who has figured this out. He is dazzled by it. He speaks about it as something wonderful. He has heard about it, that it's wonderful. But having known this, so this person, you meet this person and he will tell you that it is something wonderful and all that you see it as wonderful. Of course, this person is going to be a very, very rare entity. But this verse goes on to say that even when somebody happens to hear this from some such other person, even among this person who knows this truth is a very rare person who has known this truth. It is a very rare person who talks about it. It is a very rare person who has heard about it. And then this person, he has told this to other people. And of those other people, very few really understand what this person who has realized this thing, who is talking about, has seen this. So, Ascharyavat pashyati kaschidenam. Ascharyavat. This, if I were to paraphrase this, one sees this as a wonder, another speaks of this as a wonder, another hears of this as a wonder. Yet, even after hearing all this, the number of people who understand this are very few. This whole notion of understanding consciousness has to be taken in the right spirit. It is not like you study loads of books. It is not like that. It's a very different. It lives in a different league. It cannot be compared to the regular knowledge that we have in reading books and doing practicals. Okay, let's move to the next verse. Dehe nityamavadhyoyam dehe sarvasya bharata tasmat sarvani bhutani natvam shochetam arhasi. Dehe nityamavadhyoyam. Dehe is this soul, or this whoever is owning this body, or this indweller of this body. Dehi, nityam. We have seen this word before, nitya, eternal. Dehi nityam avadhyoyam. You avadhyo. Vadha is to destroy. Avadha is to not be able to destroy. So this thing that is there in this body, which enlivens this body is eternal and it cannot be destroyed. So one needs to remember the context in which this is being said. Arjuna is on the battlefield and he is lamenting over the fact that he may have to fight and be the cause of the death of his near and dear ones. And Sri Krishna is telling him that you cannot do that. Even if you wanted to, you will not be able to kill whatever or whoever is residing in the body of these people. It is indestructible. Dehi nityamavadhyoyam dehe sarvasya bharata. And it is all pervading, all existing. It's like space. It's a poor analogy, but it's the best that comes close to understanding when we talk about something like omnipresent. Space is something that comes to mind. Dehi nityamavadhyoyam dehe sarvasya bharata tasmat sarvani bhutani. Tasmad, therefore, sarvani, all, sarva is all. Tasmat sarvani bhutani natvam shochitam arhasi. So you, by virtue of the fact that whatever lives inside this body is indestructible and is omnipresent, therefore you should not grieve, O Arjuna, at the if it turns out to be that you have been the cause of the death of someone. You need not grieve over it, because the fact of the matter is that you are not killing them. It cannot be killed. Now, from a physical battle standpoint, one has to be careful that how you interpret this, because it would almost seem like a license given to you for killing anybody you want, because after all, the killing doesn't mean that you have killed, because as Krishna is saying here, the soul is immortal and is indestructible. So you go ahead and don't worry about it. That's not the way in which this should be taken as. We need to understand that this particular action is being conducted as a means to protect dharma, to ensure that dharma prevails. And if that calls for the elimination of certain things, then you should go ahead, and it will not cause you any harm. Especially, some of the later verses will see that the theory of karma that is there, which advocates that one happens to accumulate karma over the period of his life, and these karmas then decide the nature of your future birth. So a very naive and obvious thing is, if you happen to kill somebody, it's a negative karma and you will have to suffer the consequences of that action. And so this particular action of killing somebody, it is going to bear fruit no matter what. The action has taken place, so the results are inevitable. So here we got to keep in mind that if the action has been committed in a matter of protecting dharma, it will not incur sin. That is, from a very physical standpoint, you can interpret it like that. And you can get into a pretty heated debate and argument, and you can come across somebody who will say, this just doesn't make any sense. Who is decide what is right and what is wrong, and so on and so forth. And we don't want to get into that kind of argument. But from the onset, from the beginning of these sessions, we know that there is another meaning for this all, the Mahabharata, the Kurukshetra that is taking place. And we know that this represents the very arduous task that an aspirant, a devotee, he is trying to understand the nature of the final truth that is there, the basic truth that is there, by virtue of this, which this entire cosmos has come into existence. And in the pursuit of that truth, if you happen to come across thoughts and duties that otherwise would have been deemed necessary for you to do, and you don't do it because you are in pursuit of this higher noble goal, you have to take this executive decision. You have to take this hard decision and keep your pursuit for this final goal alive and flaming at the cost of anything else. Anything comes that is the most supreme goal that is there for a human being to understand this. So anything that comes in the way, you can reason that that thing is a effect of this fundamental thing that you're going after. Now, this particular verse here, how can that explain this state that this sadhaka is a Sanskrit word for an aspirant, a disciple. So you are trying to understand. Say it is like this, that we took the analogy that the waves, they rise in the ocean and then they fall back into the ocean. And the waves, one wave, it gives rise to the next ripple in it. And then there are other waves that then have a intersection with these waves, and all kinds of different shapes and form take place, and it's just a unending and almost chaotic kind of situation that if you begin to observe. So that is how the mind works too. And so this aspirant, the disciple, he is trying to observe the mind, and he finds a thought that rises in this ocean of the mind, and he is trying to follow it. And then another thought comes in, and another one comes in, and then they interact inside. And so he is trying to keep a track of what is happening, because he wants to know how this thought came to be in the first place. So he's doing all these kinds of things. He's trying hard. And when he's doing this, there are other things in the world that are pulling him. He needs to attend to his worldly duties. Maybe he has elderly parents he needs to take care of. He has a family he has to take care of. In order to take care of the family, he needs to earn a living. For that, he has to do something. So all these things that he needs to do in order to support the righteous things of his life, they take a secondary place compared to this pursuit of his, which is to find what it is that is driving this existence. What is this consciousness which illumines and enlightens everything that he experiences? So these thoughts which he is trying to analyze, this consciousness which is trying to get to, when he comes across a particular effort in his life, so he says that I need to go and get a few things done in order to support a certain thing for my family. And so this is like, let's say he needs to pass a certain certification so that he gets some more money in his job, something like that is there. So this particular effort of his, the amount of attention he's giving to this, if he were to not give that much of attention, if he were to ignore it, he says, I'm not going to do this because I want to use my time for the discovery, for the understanding of this consciousness that I'm trying to understand. Then the effect of that is external to what he's trying to do. There would be others that might say, that might question him, that he should not give up this worldly things that he is chasing in exchange for, at the cost of his pursuit after knowledge. And this certification that he's trying to get, if he consciously decides, I'm not going to do this, this is something that is distracting me, it is pulling me back from this other goal, this is a kind of elimination of one of his foes in the battle. And so the elimination of this foe is whatever it was going to bring to you. If you had not eliminated this foe, then whatever benefits it would have brought to you, those all you would already get if you were to follow this main goal you are pursuing. So this dehe nityam avadhyoyam, dehe sarvasya bharata. This consciousness is omnipresent. It is not just something that you are pursuing as a special goal, but these other things that we are pursuing, they also form a part of that same consciousness. Okay, let's move to the next word. Swadharmamapi chaveksha navikampitumarhasi dharmyadhyuddhyachreyonyata kshatriyasya na vidyate. Swadharmamapi chaveksha. Swadharma is, this topic is, it's easy to misunderstand from where it is coming, and there are different interpretations of this particular word. There are 2 or 3 places where similar kind of misinterpretation is possible. There is a Swadharmo Nidhanan Shreya Paradharmo Bhayava. There's one more shloka in one other place. So I will spend a little bit of time on this. Okay. Swadhara mamapi cha veksha. So swa is one's own, swadharma, one's own dharma. Swadharmamapi cha veksha. Api is also, cha is indeed. Swadharmamapi cha veksha. Navikampitum arhasi. So one should not, what shall we say, hesitate, or one should not desist from following one's own dharma. So you catch hold of something, then with all your heart, you need to pursue it. Everything else you put aside. Anything else comes, you don't get into this other thing. It's like a focused effort of your mind on pursuing that one thing. So this, what is this Swadharma? Swadharmamapi cha veksha navikampitum arhasi dharmyadhyuddha shreyanyat. Dharma yuddha, dharmadhyuddha, dharma, dharmadhyuddha shreyanyat. Shreya is better. So the battle for dharma, there is nothing superior to that. Dharmadhyuddha shreyanyat kshatriyasya na vidyate. So for a kshatriya, there is nothing more important than waging in this righteous war and to follow one's own dharma. Pretty loaded words. So for those who remember when we started out, Kshatriyas are those in the caste system whose duty is to fight and protect the nation. That is their task. See, it's we don't want to get too much into this, but there has been another misconstrued thing about this caste system, that you are born into a caste system. So there are 4 castes, and you are either a Brahmin, a Kshatriya, Vaishya, or a Kshudra. And Kshudra is the lowest level, and the people who happen to be Kshudras have been unfortunately have had to lead a very bad life, and we are not going to get into all that kind of debate and argument. People like to get into that, especially for these kind of verses. So this dharma, if you are one of these, if you are a Brahmin, which is supposed to be the highest caste, it's unfortunate the way this has been misconstrued and misinterpreted. But if you are a Brahmin, you need to, everybody supposed to respect you, which is one other problem, because now if you respect somebody, that is fine, that's your decision. But if you are expecting somebody else to respect you, that is a problem. You can't expect people that you can't force them. There is a saying in English, you cannot demand respect, or you should not demand respect. You should command respect. By themselves, people should respect you. So if you're a Brahmin, you follow the rules laid down by what a Brahmin is supposed to do. If you're a Kshatriya, you follow what a Kshatriya is supposed to do. Vaishya, and Shudra. But the fact of the matter is that it is more like you happen to take on things that you are comfortable with, you like, you happen to, sometimes, many times, you don't even know the onset to what it is that you might end up doing in your life. So you start off somewhere. You get your accounting degree, and then you end up being a computer graduate. I know of somebody who did his master's in economics and ended up being a neurosurgeon. So it's you whatever it is that you end up being, you take on that profession. So if you become a scientist or a professor, then roughly you are a Brahmin. If you end up in the army and air force, you are a Kshatriya. It's not like you get born as an air force pilot. Right? You're not born like that. You happen to become that if you like, if you get qualified and so on and so forth. So in that same vein, same light, if you are a Kshatriya, you need to fight. That is your dharma. So the thing is that the we are slightly over time here, but the idea that one is a Brahmin or one is a Kshatriya or the Vaishya or one is Shudra is so inaccurate or so wrong that it is virtually impossible for anybody to be siloed into one of these four. The fact of the matter is all four of these are present in everybody, and some of the one of them dominates the other. Sometimes it's even more problematic that certain time of the day or week or in your life, there's a period of time in your life when you are dominated as a Brahmin. In another, you are dominated as a Kshatriya. So it's not even like a type of person that taking it is the same person. And in this context, this disciple who is meditating, are you going to call this person a Brahmin? You call him if you want. Anybody could do that. He is sitting down, trying to focus his mind on the thoughts. And when he's trying to do that, he's actually fighting. He is fighting, putting down thoughts that are being a distraction so he can focus on the thing that he's after. And this fight of his, he is actually a Kshatriya. At that time, at that point in his meditation, he is a Kshatriya. That point in his intellectual and mental exercise is what is being talked about in this verse. So I will continue with this next time. Thanks for listening and have a nice weekend.